All right, let's go ahead and kick it off. Welcome everybody. This is the 50th daily episode of Let's Do Lunch, which Digital Media Wire started 8 weeks ago as the stay-at-home orders went into place, with the goal of bringing community together to discuss important issues in the entertainment and digital industries. We're here today to offer this forum and to listen and give support to all of our friends and colleagues, but particularly to our Black friends and colleagues who've been and continue to be under attack in our country, subjected to racism, discrimination, and violence. This, we hope, is the start of a discussion, not an end-all, and we plan to continue this in future segments and forums. For those of us who are not Black, we must acknowledge that we can't truly understand the pain and suffering experienced by our friends, co-workers, and the larger community, but we can and we must continue to try. While we know that dialogue alone won't bring change, we hope that by bringing people in our industry together for open discussion, we can help to further the goal of a world, including our companies and workplaces, that's free of racism and discrimination, and where every person has social, economic, and political power to thrive. As our last president, Barack Obama, said, we did not come here to fear the future, but to shape it. Before I turn it over to our speakers, let me just set some of the ground rules. This is a really big group today. In fact, we had over 500 people register, and we're now broadcasting on YouTube in addition to Zoom to accommodate the interest and participation from industry friends, family, and press. If you've been to webinars, the 49 in the past, over the past 2 months, you know that our format's been Zoom webinar, where only the panelists have cameras on or invited to speak. Today though, we're trying something new, and I must say it's really amazing to see so many of your faces. So here's what you're going to be able to do. First, please everyone introduce yourselves in the chat. Feel free to post your LinkedIn or contact information, any initial thoughts that you may have. The chat button is right on the bottom nav. We've set this up as a meeting instead of a webinar so that we can bring people into the discussion, and that's what we intend to do. If you have something to say, please DM me, Ned Sherman, with your question or comment, and I'll do my best to identify as many people and then contact you back and open up your mic so that you can come on and speak. It's not going to be perfect. There are a lot of people on here, so please bear with us. This is a new format for us, and we're going to try to do our best to involve as many people. All right, now it's with the deepest respect that I introduced our panelists. Our first speaker is Jonathan Azu. Azu is the founder of Culture Collective, an artist management company representing a top roster of artists and musicians, including Anita Baker, Michelle Williams, Corey Henry, and Luke James. Joining Azu is Shavonne Dargan, SVP of Brand Management at Live Nation, where she's also the executive sponsor of the Black Employee Resource Group. Thank you, Azu and Shavonne, for leading this discussion today. I'm going to join the audience, and I'll be looking for hands up or DMs to me and introducing them into the discussion. I'll turn it over to you guys.
Thanks a lot, Ned. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having us. And, you know, just building on what's been a really difficult past couple weeks, you know, I like Ned, thought it would be great to open up the forum. So, you know, I'm going to say a few things, introduce Shavonne. I'm sure she has some thoughts, and then, you know, we'll open it up to questions and conversation. You know, I'm going to come from a perspective that I have had, that I have lived as a executive in as a Black executive in entertainment. You know, my career is, you know, I've worked in corporate, I've worked for CBS radio for many, many years. I've worked in the independent music sector, in live festivals, and then, you know, most recently in management, where I was an operator at Red Light Management, one of the premier management companies, and you know, decided to take a leap and start my own company, Culture Collective, which I'll get into, you know, the reasons why I started Culture Collective. But very much looking forward to this conversation, and I'll lead it over to you, Shavonne.
Thank you, and thank you for asking me to participate. We were talking a little bit earlier before this, and I was just saying how therapeutic it's been for me to just be talking to people about this. So I've had a career in sports and music entertainment for over 20 years. I too am a Black executive, and I think it'll be unique to share our perspectives because yes, we are both Black and we are both executives in the music space, but Jonathan's perspective as a Black man is likely very different from mine as a Black woman. So I too am looking forward to sharing in conversation and for all of you to participate. And the dialogue, like Ned said, is where it starts, and hopefully we continue it.
Yep. And just a brief thought, I think that, race at work is very important. I think what we're dealing with as a country, in the violent acts that happen now and happen in Minneapolis are the most extreme examples of what prejudice and racism can do to a human being. But I do believe that manifests itself in different ways, and it manifests itself in corporate culture. Yes, it may not be, killing somebody, but there's ways in which this manifests itself. And we don't talk enough about race at work because it's a difficult conversation, but it gets even harder when it's a crisis. And right now we're in a crisis in this country, and it's made the conversation much more difficult. So the goal really needs to be for organizations of all size to set up a structure and an environment where people can learn about the people they work with and the things that they bring to the table as executives, but also the things that they bring to the table as people. And it's much easier to deal with these things when you've been equipped with the tools to talk about race, versus it being just the subject of the week or the month because of a crisis. So that's, just one top line comment that I have. Shavonne, I don't know if you want to share anything, and then of course I think we should open it up for conversation.
Yeah, I think it's important. You mentioned, we're in crisis, and so we're almost forced into these conversations, and a lot of people are not equipped to have this conversation, specifically in leadership in corporate positions. And now it's being called to the forefront because it's urgent, but it's kind of a little bit of a wake-up call. We should always be prepared to have these kinds of conversations. And race and discussions about racism have been so taboo. I was telling someone the other day, Black people wake up and think about race, and we have conversations about race and racism almost every day. So it's not taboo. It's not taboo to me. I welcome that conversation from people. I find it, comforting in a way when my friends who are not Black and not living my experience have enough courage, because a lot of times it does take some courage to have those conversations. And I express that, if it's coming from love, it's okay to not agree on something. It's okay to ask a question that may be a little bit uninformed, as long as you're open to understanding and learning and really listening, and then working it out together. But nothing is going to be accomplished without conversation.
Yeah, and just to build on what you were saying, I agree that we essentially as minorities walk in the avenue of whiteness every single day, because culturally and from a societal standpoint, things are built around the majority, not around the minority. So we often are trying to find ways in which we can fit into that box, whether it's, Black culture having to be Black culture, not culture, right? Your hair having to be wild because it's different, but it's just your hair, right? So there's all these examples of how we have to fit into the majority. And this is a great opportunity for people to, to do something to make it better, right? To have a voice. Sometimes as a minority, and I've had this many times in my professional career, when somebody says something that's off at a table, in a work function, at a dinner table or at an office or in a meeting. And sometimes as the minority, it's hard to to be the one to defend for yourself. So I think it's important for the majority, right, to learn these things, right, and have the tools to bring it up, to talk about it, and not be a thing where it's always, well, we have to go to the person that's of color to find the solution. The solution could be amongst themselves.
I agree. It's extremely isolating if you've ever been in a situation where you are the only, right, at the table, whether it's a dinner table or a boardroom table, and there's something that's, you know, has a twinge of inappropriateness that's either stated or there's assumptions made, and speaking up is isolating, and in some ways perpetuates some of those stereotypes. You know, speaking up sometimes makes people think that I'm dissatisfied or angry. That's not the case. It's I am compelled to do so because I don't have another choice. So yeah, it's extremely isolating to be in spaces where you know, there's something that needs to be addressed and stated and corrected, and you don't really have anyone else around you to support in that. And the culture, the whole entire culture, is not one that was built with you in mind. So yeah, it's isolating a lot.
Totally agree. Ned, you have questions, comments?
We have a lot of questions coming in here. Let's see, could we bring Christina Charlery to the stage? Can someone unmute her? Okay.
Hi.
Hi, you're on. Christina, please go ahead with your question.
Sure. I just want to thank Shavonne and Jonathan for creating this space first and foremost. My question is something that I think is probably more relevant to entertainment and marketing, and that's around how do we balance filtering conversations around Black culture being the most marketable or what's cool right now, and kind of like sit through these uncomfortable discussions around monetizing something that is so dear to you, especially when the ultimate decision makers aren't Black people or people of color. And I think this is also more relevant to people who are more junior or mid-level and just trying to represent your culture well, but not, you know, disrespect the process of a brainstorm.
It's a great question. Just one comment that I have is that I think, you know, we have a lot of challenges as we know in the industry of clear paths for Black executives for Black to become executives in this business. You know, I always say I got to where I'm at in my career, you know, vice president, general manager, now a founder of a company, on the shoulders of a lot of people that didn't look like me, that believed in me and wanted to allow me a path, access to the relationships to get to where I'm going. But it doesn't happen enough in this business. And the concerning thing that I have, like you, is we're at a point now in the industry where there's even more of a focus on monetizing, you know, Black culture, and the executives that are at the stakeholders don't look like us. And is one of the reasons why I created Culture Collective, was to make sure that we can preserve and, you know, take hold of our conversation, our narrative, because you don't want that to be mistold. And if you're in those rooms, I think you have to, you know, you have to mobilize and really have a voice to make sure that it's being told the right way. But ultimately, it starts at the top. You know, it starts at the top at these companies. And yeah, you know, we saw a lot of companies posting things this past week about their support and writing checks. But ultimately, you have to walk it. You have to walk in your walk. You have to walk in exactly what you're saying. It has to be intentional. And I think that's one of the challenges that we have. So I don't have a clear answer other than there needs to be more pressure on executives, board members, chair people, to put the right people in place that can help preserve the culture for what's being, you know, monetized, as you said. Shavonne, do you have thoughts?
I do. And I know Christina, she used to work with me, but absolutely it starts at the top, and there's not enough people that are representative of some of the conversations and culture, and Black people specifically, when these conversations are having and when these decisions are being made. But I would say be bold and speak up anyway. Find somebody in the company that shares your perspective. They don't have to necessarily be Black. I know that that's a challenge in a lot of places, but you have to have support in some way that helps to validate some of the things that you're feeling and thinking, that then make you feel a little bit more empowered and bold enough to speak up in that room and say, you know, hey, I have a couple of questions on how we got here, right? Just, you know, pose it back. I find that asking a lot of questions to get other people to think about, you know, what they're positioning a little bit more deeply. For open-minded people, you don't even have to all the time say, that's highly inappropriate, that's not like that, we're gonna dig ourselves a hole if we go that route marketing this way to, you know, this audience. You know, you can pose questions and just, you know, challenge that way if you're not comfortable enough to challenge directly and say, hey, that's wrong, that doesn't feel right, etc. But, you know, you gotta find those people that will support you, that are at a higher level, and just speak up.
Yeah, and just to mention as well, I mean, for the executives out there that aren't creating an environment to where these ideas can be shared openly and accepted, and putting the right people in position. You know, if you think it's difficult now to talk about race at work, right? And you know, it gets, just imagine what it's going to be like when you get called out on it, the company, right? And you want to be on the right side of this thing, not the wrong side of this thing, you know, when it all comes down. So, you know, if you're an employee at one of these companies, that, you know, you've got to stress that your executive ranks take that to heart, because ultimately you work for these companies, and you want, as an employee, you want to be on the right side. If not, you have to do some soul searching on whether that's the right place for you. And that's just the real thing.
Great question, Christina.
All right, let's see. We have a number of other questions. As a reminder, folks, if you can DM me, Ned Sherman, with your questions, and I'll get you in the queue, and we'll invite you to come on to ask your question or comment. Next, can we turn on Tonya Hughes, who has a question?
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
So my question is, I'm finding that some large companies that have a diversity and inclusion corporate strategy seem designed to maintain the status quo. The strategy that is intended to make a difference really is just designed to appear this way. So I'd love to hear your points of view of how this can be addressed systemically.
I mean, I think now people can't do that. You're not going to get away with that anymore. Companies that are doing that D&I was a show or a check the box, because, and it's unfortunate that it took, I don't know what number of you know, Black man dying at the hands of the police, or Black person dying at the hands of the police, or being brutalized because of racism in this country. But you can't hide anymore. No company at this point. Everyone's going to be called out. I think I feel it's my responsibility as a Black executive at my company. I've always felt this way, to have a voice, but even more so now than ever. So where I was a little hesitant in the past to say something in the moment out of fear of being viewed as, you know, whatever, insert stereotype, it doesn't matter to me anymore, right? What someone's going to think of me. It's my duty I have this voice, I'm going to use it, and I'm gonna be diplomatic about it, but you know, I'm gonna do my part to make sure that when something is spoken about how we're going to be equitable, I'm gonna hold people accountable. And I think we're in a space now, you know, that folks are gonna have to be called to the table on what they say.
Yeah, and I think also too, I mean, if it's a larger company, you know, there tends to be, obviously there's more people and there's more of an initiative to make sure that whatever programs are putting together are long term, not just of the moment, not just calling everybody into the conference room, you know, putting tissue boxes in the middle of the table and saying, let's just talk through it. And then once we talk through it, it's all good. I think companies need to look for resources and tools that they can apply to make real change at their companies. And they're out there, you know. I know, I think we're going to be sharing some links after this webinar on some different tools and resources that are out there for companies. But again, you know, like I said before, it has to be authentic and it has to start from the top. And without that, it's hard to initiate real change. There could be groundswells, you know. I've been in situations at companies that didn't do the best job or job at all of diversifying, and yeah, we would take the Black employees that worked at the company and we would pull ourselves into a closed conference room and talk it out, you know, amongst each other. So we would create our own resource group. So there's things that you can do from a groundswell perspective, but it needs to come from the top as well.
Okay, we have a lot of questions coming in here. So folks, we're going to try to get to as many people as possible. Can we turn on Jonathan Handel?
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, hi, Jonathan.
Great, hey. So I wanted, Shavonne, you mentioned courage in the context of white people bringing up, you know, talking about race with you guys. But I mean, I think the matter of courage is really, that I want to acknowledge, is the courage that you guys have in, you know, in just living your day-to-day lives, you know, not just in this industry, but in this country and dealing with this kind of stuff. How do you, and that's what my question's about, how do you find the courage to live, if it's not too personal question, to live day to day and to live in this industry, and what can people do to, you know, what else can people do to support you in what, you know, is, I can only extrapolate slightly, being Jewish and gay, you know, is obviously a very difficult and emotional you know, way to have to live.
It's a great question. I mean, I think ultimately it's who we are. I mean, to speak for myself, it's who I am. It's what I've always been raised around. You know, and as I went through life professionally, right? What began to be, I guess that's the way it is, shifted into, I think I know why it is. I start to now clearly see the systemic issues that exist within entertainment. You know, case in point, in order to get an internship at most of the companies in entertainment, yeah, the HR department will say, when, you know, we're trying to interview more diverse candidates, we're trying to do this, we're trying to do that, but the internships are for free. Like, you have to work for free. You know, we don't pay interns. Well, right there, you get into a social economical challenge, right? Because if you can't afford to fly to Los Angeles or go to New York and set your own situation up, you can't get an internship at some of these premier companies. So if you can't get an internship, when they go to hire the assistant or coordinator, and they often look to the intern pool to do that, there's nobody of color. So it's systemic issues, right? And it's a, you know, you may say to yourself, that's a little thing that's very fixable. And I agree, it's very fixable, but it has to be done with intent. And if it's not done with intent, it's hard to see change. So, you know, I've now, you know, and this is an example of that, I've taken it upon myself to really bring up and address and try to correct some of the systemic issues that are happening in our industry. And that's really what keeps me going in this business. That's what wakes me up. You know, I'm opening my voice, and if I can make an impact on somebody from just watching this or reading something about myself or the company, or, you know, or mentoring, which is another very important thing, I'm helping to make a difference. That's what keeps me going.
Yeah, I don't view myself as courageous. I just I am like we live this every day. This is all I know. I'm 47, and so my grandmother, my mother, like they've ingrained in me to be strong, work hard, but always be hopeful. And so I think um, we are a hopeful people. You know, given the history, we still hold out hope that it's gonna be better. So and yeah, it exactly what Azu said about the intern pool, and it starts there, and there it also makes me feel more of a responsibility in the position that I hold to do more. And I'm motivated by what the possibilities are, and how I can have even a small impact on the possibilities for other young men and women of color that want to work in entertainment and come up after us. So
Thank
thanks.
you for the question.
Hi, Leslie. I see you. That's our attorney. Is Ned? Where's Ned?
Ned, are you there?
Sorry, guys, I had a computer crash, but I'm back.
Oh, okay. All right.
All right, can we unmute Mark Patterson? Oh, I'm sorry, Sebastian Daly is actually next, not Mark Patterson. Sorry about that. If we can go to...
Hi, Sebastian, how are you?
Hey guys,
first. Yeah.
thank you very much for putting this on. So my question is about what structural changes have you seen work in companies to elevate the voices of Black and other minority voices such that they inform and educate the decisions of leadership as companies begin to scale. It can often be hard, especially if they're global, to ensure that those voices are being represented. And I'm just trying to think from like actionable next steps to really take this and have great learnings from it as to what structural changes could we look to implement here?
I think Jonathan earlier mentioned that intention is like key, right? Companies have to be intentional about, first acknowledge that there is something that needs to be addressed and changed, and then be intentional about actually putting things into place that will change it, not just for the day, but for the long term. And so it again starts with recruitment practices. It starts with internships. It starts with having programs in place and a culture in which Black employees can feel like there's a potential for a future there. And if you're a Black or minority employee and you're at a company for 3 years and there is no representation in higher level positions or even mid-level positions, to be honest, in some instances, there's no representation that looks like you don't really believe that is an opportunity for you. And in the entertainment business, one would expect that it would be far more diverse, just get specifically music entertainment. We have work to do. Again, I hold out hope. I've made it. There's several, Black executives in the music industry. There aren't enough. But it has to start with shifting culture in the corporate culture. It has to be led with intent, and I also think there have to be incentives, right, tied to performance, right? If you tie increasing your staff diversity and leveling up employees of color and creating a path, if you tie that to somebody's revenue or their money, yeah, they're probably going to act a little bit more with a little bit more care and a little bit more seriousness. It's a conversation, and it's like, yeah, we're gonna do these things, but it's not necessarily there are no stakes tied to it.
Metrics are an important thing. This is, it's intangible, the conversation, but there are measurable things that you can look to see how a company is performing against a goal. Thank you for the question.
All right, we have, let's see, Mark Patterson is next, and Samantha Wright, you're going to be right after Mark. And then we have, looks like we have about 15 questions in the queue, folks. So, and some people with comments too. So we'll be trying to, get through as many as we can. But let's bring on Mark next.
Thanks, Ned. And thank you, Shavonne and Jonathan, for doing this session today. Extremely important. And thank you for your continued contributions. We've seen a lot of media messaging coming out from companies and organizations taking their stand on, how they see things in this world. What advice would you give brands to not come across as being exploitive during this really important time?
Yeah, I think you first, and I agree with you. I feel like a lot of these companies in entertainment specifically have leapfrogged the process that they really want to take. I hope they want to take right to, hey, this is not right. There should be a change. We're going to change, and we're going to donate money. And then it's see you Monday morning. There's no real initiative after that. And I think that, companies really need to think about what they're doing. I told somebody the other day that was making a comment that a company had not posted anything related to the crisis, let's call it, right, in the last couple of weeks. And I had said, I actually appreciate that they haven't posted anything, because I hope they're thinking about what they're posting. And if they're not posting, then at least we know where they're coming from, right? We know where they stand. The things I get concerned about, and this actually is, as a Black man in America, I get more concerned about the person that says that, has the Black Lives Matter poster in their window, right? And support. And honestly, I would never in a million years think that person would think that something as horrible that happened in Minnesota was okay. But that same person, when it comes to hiring decisions, when it comes to voting decisions, they tend to yield what makes them feel comfortable. And they don't necessarily think about how one impacts the other. I'm more challenged as an executive about that than I am about crisis-related things. I think about crisis-related things. I get pulled over by the police. I'm going to think about Minnesota, but I'm much more to think about how this impacts me every day in the work environment, because that's where I'm at the most. So I think companies have to really, really dig down and think hard about what changes they want to make and how they want to go about making those changes, and then opening up the conversation and be in a subcommittee or other executives. And I like committees because you can pull everyone from the intern on up to the chairman to be a part of that conversation and really distill down. And again, the bigger the company, the more I encourage to find outside resources to come in. Smaller companies, sometimes there's some financial limitations, but I'm sure there's possibly some nonprofits out there that would also be willing to come in and be a little bit of a mediator of sorts. Someone that doesn't really have any stakes in the game. They don't work at the company, and they can come and bring a perspective.
That's a good point. I'll just build on that last point that Jonathan made. It does sometimes make sense to bring some third party outside resource in to really help a company or a brand think through what your messaging is going to be around this, because I don't think that there is an expectation that you're going to get it 100% right. A brand could say something that is, beautifully stated and has some actionable items, and somebody's still going to critique it. And there's no, one way to fix racism. But I think, taking a step back and really having people in the room who know what they're doing, who maybe have a little bit of history, can help frame, just thinking around how a company or a brand is going to address, issues like this. And it's okay to take the time. Don't wait a month when the protests are dying down, but make a statement. It should be authentic. It doesn't have to include everything that you intend to do, but it should express some action, right? Some acknowledgement, some action, and then what are you going to do to hold yourselves and your staff and your brand and your company accountable for changes moving forward?
Okay, let's bring on Samantha Wright.
Okay, good. Hi,
Samantha.
Hi, Jonathan and Shavonne. It's so good to be here. My name is Samantha. I'm a little nervous. I'll do my best. So I'm an artist. I'm more right-brained here. I'm pausing. I have a question, but I need to pause and like be able to think about it. Because I really want to participate today, and I didn't know about this till shortly before I signed on. So there is a question, but I'll tell you a little bit about me because I think it would be helpful. So my background is in theater. I'm a classically trained actress. I studied at New York University, Tisch School of the Arts. I'm African, Polish, German, Irish, and Native American. My consciousness is Black. I'm an Africana Studies minor. Anyway, so I have a degree in acting, and I've been moving toward, I've been doing modeling in the last several years, and I'm looking to produce my own music because I'm also a singer-songwriter, and I feel like I want to be in control of that. Okay, so I'm going to set that to the side. My intention today is that I do want to ask some questions of you guys to find some next actionable steps for me, but I'd also like to keep in touch with people. And yeah, I want to offer my contact info, which I know I can in the chat, but I guess, so this question is personal to me, but it's like, maybe it's more cathartic. I was also arrested earlier this week at a protest for staying after curfew. So I'm just like, my adrenaline's just pumping, being someone who's very Black identified and doesn't necessarily appear that way. And I'm very aware of the exoticism that happens with fair-skinned Black women or more ambiguous Black women. So it's just like a constant, the images I was looking up, or as I've been collecting images of like the original tragic mulatto myth, and like a sketch of me that's meant to imitate that, and like modeling stuff and like comparing that to like these images. So basically I'm a singer-songwriter that wants to incorporate my ideas in the visual representation, I think, more so than the lyrical content. So my question is basically, I don't know what my question is. Can I keep in touch?
Yeah, I think I mean, not that it was a question that you had, but one thing that I've worked with, artists before that are mixed race, right? And who are fair skinned, but identify themselves culturally as Black. And they are in the R&B genre of music, and the industry constantly wants to put them in a box as non-Black because they tend to have fair skin. And that's also an example, right, of the industry and society saying, hey, come, we're gonna pull you into the majority side because that's what society's set up for, right? And I think it's important for you as an artist to really stay true to who you are. I always tell artists, it's, when you wake up in the morning and you look in the mirror, that's you that you're looking at. And you have to remember that, and you got to be okay with that. So make sure that everybody else follow suit, because that's, you are who you are.
All right, we have a question here from Alessandro Madurowicz. Could we turn on Alessandro? And just a comment, folks. It looks like we have about 20 minutes left here in the meeting, and God, there are a lot of people who have posted to have questions. We'll try to get as many in as we can, but apologies in advance for folks we're not going to get to. But let's have Alessandra on here.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for putting this space together. I know how open and vulnerable it is, so I just want to honor everyone that's here and you guys for putting it together. I understand that it's not my place to lead in this education, and I understand it's not your job to educate us. When I say us, I mean white people, on what has happened in this country and what has now come to surface. So where I'm struggling and would love your opinions or thoughts is, how do you challenge performative allyship in the workplace when they are making statements and they say these things, but I want to facilitate these conversations more, not lead them. But at this point, I'm the main ally. So I would just love to kind of get your thoughts on towing the line of facilitation and avoiding and challenging performative allyship.
I would say two things. Challenge it. You have a better chance of getting somewhere and moving that conversation forward than I would in challenging it if it's coming from an ally and it's not genuine. I would also say that people don't know how to be allies, right? People don't know what that means. I don't know that there's been another time where people have been called on to be allies as greatly as it's happening right now in this moment. And as heavily frustrating as it can get for me to be getting questions and outreach and all, I definitely will preserve my peace when necessary, but I also feel like I need to remain open when people reach out to me and have questions and are ready for some kind of dialogue that's going to make them uncomfortable. But I would say, please teach. There's no right or wrong way. Like, you don't feel like you're not in a position to do whatever. Like, you are, and it's needed, because people don't understand how to be an ally. And I think if whatever you could offer and guidance and have those conversations among your white peers, that's going to help.
We can't, as minorities, carry this burden alone. And this week it's been interesting. I've had I'll give you one example. I have a 6.5-year-old son, and I've tried my best to limit the exposure to everything that's going on. Obviously, he knows something's going on because his life has changed, right? And I was telling somebody that was white, about going on a walk the other day and running into a National Guard with a machine gun. And it's you can't avoid having the conversation about why there's somebody with a machine gun, an army person with a machine gun outside of our neighborhood. And the person had said to me, I just can't imagine having to have that conversation with your kid, with my kid. Or I can't imagine having to have the conversation about, race with my kid. And my thing is, why can't you imagine that? You should. Our kids are in the same community. We're in the same community. We can't carry this burden on our own. It needs to be carried around to everybody. And part of that is obviously having the communication and understanding of where people are coming from, but we can't carry this burden alone. So I encourage you to carry it as well. And everybody else out there that's not a minority, help carry it, because again, everyone can make this better. And it's much easier to continue the conversation, because when the crisis happens, and I promise you, this will happen again. I promise you, it's happened again, and we just haven't seen the video yet of it, right? The crisis side of it. You'll be more equipped, more prepared to have the conversation.
Thank you for the question.
Okay. All right, we have a question from someone who goes by the name of Visionaire. Visionaire, can we bring Visionaire on?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. How you doing?
Yeah. Thanks for your time. So Visionaire is it's an abstract art concept that encompasses the narrative of Black and Brown people. So all the work that I do is centered around what we're talking about. But speaking frankly, as a Black artist who's been signed to a major label, and I've seen, quote unquote, the other side, the second most immediate challenge people of color face in this country is a restriction to access. So if you know, resources are the club, access is the bouncer, right? And basically privilege is the metric by which entry is granted, right? And the thing that my question really centers around the economic side of that privilege, the handoff that will inevitably need to occur, and that is occurring now as companies are reaching out to people like myself for my perspective as a Black artist, as a creator of culture. So what I'm curious about and what I'm fearful of is the appropriation of this perspective for less than what it is actually worth. So I'm very curious as to to y'all perspective on monetizing our perspective as people of color, and also the reality that in order for equity to be achieved, certain people, certain white people, very powerful white people, will have to renounce that privilege, renounce that power, renounce that wealth, in order for there to be some sort of realistic equity where we can actually move forward or move up the socio-economic ladder. So I'm just curious as to your perspective on that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I left the more corporatized, if you will, world to start my own company with the mission of preserving culture within the artist management realm. And then also what was important to me was to be an entrepreneur and to be a Black business owner in this industry. And there should be more of us. And I'm lucky enough to have been a part of other organizations where I was able to get the skill sets and knowledge base and build relationships to be able to do this in an easier way. And we need to do that more, because the more we do that, the more that we will have entrepreneurs out there building businesses to make sure that it's preserved. That being said, it's equally as important to have people of color inside what I call the buildings, right? Which would be the major companies that are out there. Because without that, we can't make sure that our narrative is being told the right way there as well. And Shavonne, I don't know if you want to build that as somebody that's in one of those buildings.
Yeah, I'm in the building, and I'm at the table, and I'm in the room, and I'm new to it, so it's bizarre to me. But I stated earlier that now that I'm here, it is my duty to continue to move things forward for people that are going to come after me. And so while I don't have a whole hell of a lot of power or authority, what I do have, I exercise fully. And I'm, I do my part and write the emails and make the calls and hire, make sure the interns are diverse, and make sure that there's, when I'm recruiting for an open position or there's an open position on the team, there's an intentional effort from the first time we're receiving resumes. I don't even want to see resumes if we don't have a certain percentage of candidates who are diverse and of color. So, those of us who are in the building and have what authority and abilities we have to fully exercise them, and then just keep having the conversations with the folks who can impact more change.
Okay, let's bring on Tracy Seals, please. Tracy.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for having this discussion. My question is, as a kind of like you, Jonathan, left corporate America with a friend, we start our own business, and our business is Elevating Women Empowerment Group, but we also have 2 subgroups under that, Empowered Boss Life Magazine and Are You Entertainment Consulting. The question is, we have such a diverse portfolio of clients, and what we have seen in our past with having our business, that our clients of color don't get the same opportunities with the businesses that we reach out to for sponsorships and advertising as our clients that are white or Hispanic. So how do we fix this? Now, we can go to a Black-owned business and they are more willing to support than a predominantly white business for our clients. Now, we project them, one of our clients that is, white or Hispanic, they'll jump on it. But as far as our Black clients, they get more support from the Black-owned businesses.
Shavonne, I don't know if you want to, as a brand marketer, if you want to address that.
I lost the question. Sorry.
So the question was, when you have clients who are of diverse cultures and you're trying to get them sponsorships or opportunities to work with white-owned businesses, the businesses are choosing to work with the non-Black businesses before they'll work with the Black businesses. But the Black-owned business, they want to work across the board. They don't care because they're willing to use their marketing dollars to sponsor whoever. But you have the predominantly white-owned businesses that if they're not white or Hispanic, they don't want to form that sponsorship with them.
So we work with major Fortune 500 brands, and majority of them have specific marketing budgets and dollars and digital dollars that are earmarked for multicultural, right? It's all multicultural. And what I find is, because there's so much of Black culture that's now, it's culture, right? It's just culture. There's not really any true, separation in the minds of some marketers at the brand level of needing to edit messaging to fit the multicultural audience, because everything, the commercials have a hip hop music bed or the whatever it is. And from the perspective of the work that I do, I find it the challenge more that we have these platforms that are geared toward a Black audience, so a gospel festival, or some smaller scale event that is really targeting a Black audience and trying to get those brands who have these multicultural dollars and massive budgets and say they want to speak to this specific audience. We have a challenge having those conversations where we're bringing you this exact audience that you say you want, that you say you're marketing to, but you'd rather still spend your marketing dollars at this festival that's a hip hop festival, but the attendees are not the audience that you say you're trying to attract. So I know that this is not answering your question, because I don't know that I can answer your question outside of just sharing the perspective. There's a lot of work to do in just helping even marketers sometimes understand who who your real audience is and who are you really trying to market to, and it
Yeah, and just
some of those concepts of marketing that folks are just so used to.
and one thing to remember is, just in case of Fortune 500 companies, there's only 4 Black CEOs in Fortune 500. Literally in all the Fortune 500 companies, there's only 4, and then on top of that, none of those 4 are in the entertainment sector.
All right, I think we have time for 2 more questions, and I'm sorry that we have a lot more than 4 or 2 in the queue here. But let's go to Lucia Ash next. We could turn on Lucia's mic.
Hello. Is everybody seeing? Hi. I am a live event promoter and producer, and I worked with Live Nation last year on the Tyler Perry tour, which was a tour that was over 43 cities. And what I found is that I had an opportunity to work with probably 40 or more Live Nation employees on that tour. And I found that there were very few minorities working out in the field with marketing, production, ticketing around the country in the different regions, because it was a national tour. And being that we were a Black tour, I just found it very kind of disheartening to work with such a large company with so many employees, with very few minority, both women and Black or even Hispanic employees. I think I experienced maybe 4 out of over 40 employees that I work with Live Nation. So I'm wondering specifically, since Live Nation is one of the larger entertainment companies, what they're doing specifically to encourage the discussion around Blackness in their company, especially since they make so much money off of Black music and Black entertainment properties, and also their diverse hiring. Like, is there a specific initiative? Is there something that they're doing very actively in order to make that happen? Because I definitely didn't experience it last year.
So I can't speak specifically to, hiring practices and all of that stuff. That's outside of my function. What I can say is it's an industry-wide challenge. Just think about promoters and just the live industry as a whole. And promoters are promoters for their entire lives, right? And all of these entities came together. They were separate promoters that Live Nation, brought all together to form, right, one company. And it's just the history kind of this industry, and it's not going to be changed overnight. But there are absolutely measures being taken to make sure that we are intentional about, like I said earlier, interns, and this is across, not just in a marketing function or a sales function, but like across the company. Let's look at how are we finding interns? Where are we recruiting people from? And then mentorship. I think Azu or somebody had a question earlier, and it was mentioned that we have to right now we may only have 1 Black promoter or 1 promoter of color, but doesn't matter. Whatever promoters we have, it starts with ensuring that there is a corporate which we are encouraging people to mentor others that don't look like them, or be intentional about hiring, their interns and their entry-level staff, or just even having conversations at an HBCU, anything. Those conversations are being had. Those conversations are encouraged. Again, I can't really speak to what exactly a plan is. It's not my function, but it's not a unique problem for my company. It's the industry.
Okay, let's take a final question here, and then would love to hear, kind of just final thoughts from both of you, Shavonne and Azu. But let's bring to the stage here Rosemary Ampuro Jacobs.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for lending your time. As a Hispanic woman who's worked in corporate as well as in tech, I find that there's always these subgroups that are created, Hispanic committee, Asian committee, African American committee within these corporations. But what I find curious and worrisome is that there's a lot of power in all of us working together. And as minorities, and I want to hear your opinion, how do we make that happen within a corporate setting? Knowing how difficult it is, I'd love to hear your opinion on it. Just as individuals, obviously we can contribute, but really making a change by working together and not isolating each other as people of color. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, and I thank you so much for this talk. You guys are amazing. Anyhow, so I'll be quiet now.
Yeah, just from my personal experience, those committees have usually formed in two ways. One is they formed because nothing else was happening at the company, so they kind of organically formed. It was like, listen, we gotta get in a room and talk it through amongst ourselves because there's no other support system within this building to do it, right? And obviously that's a problem, right? Because that means that the executive ranks or the key stakeholders in the company aren't making it an initiative to do. Or a company has said that they want to make an initiative and they're going to put the responsibility, the burden, if you will, on that minority group to come back and tell the company what they should do. And to me, that's more of a looking for a directive, looking for a mandate just to put down to say that they've done it, right? Without, again, really, really walking with purpose. I think committees are best built around diversity. I think there should be, again, people from different levels of seniority within that committee, and there should be people from different cultures in that committee. And the bigger the company, there should be also the presence of somebody that is an outside consultant that can come in and help guide. So that's my own personal experience. Shavonne, I'm not sure if you have thoughts.
I have found that the forming of these groups, for me, even at this stage in my career, like I've come up without support at working at these large companies, and I need it even now. Like I get where you're coming from with the question, but I need that sense of community. And I want to see it expand, and I want to see more voices come together. But it has been tremendous for me since my company has introduced a serious focus on diversity and equity, and the forming of employee resource groups, and making it okay for employees of color to band together and have these meetings. And it would be before, years ago, it would be 4 Black people, the 4 Black people that existed in the whole of the company would be in the same area together, and we'd be like, oh God, we can't, they can't see us all together because they're gonna think we're plotting something. Those feelings don't exist in me anymore, because we have now these safe spaces to convene, and it's expected now because it's more formalized. But I would like to see, and we had some recent, I was recently having a conversation with one of my colleagues about doing more together. So we have these safe spaces, and we have these, different employee resource groups for the different groups of minorities and other. And we're solid there, but I would like to see a bigger coming together and forming some kind of committee that's made up of representation from across those ERGs to help push change forward.
All right, folks, this has really been a great session, and I would just want to thank Azu and Shavonne for coming out and leading this, and for everybody who asked questions and opened up here. As I said at the start, this is just just the beginning. We're not, this isn't a one and out. We want to keep doing this. So, you know, please, those of you who had questions or thoughts, email them to laura@digitalmediawire.com. And we will, you know, try to incorporate it into what our plans are for the next sessions, and get back to you with responses as well. Azu and Shavonne, do you guys want to kind of close out with some thoughts? Maybe, you know, some of the resources out there, some of the things that are going on that would be helpful to folks as well.
Yeah, I think just some thoughts are, you quoted Barack Obama earlier, and I'll you know, on his desk in the Oval Office when he was there, he had a thing that said, "Hard things are hard," right? And this is hard. Talking about race is hard. There's no hiding that. But again, the more that we push it forward, the more that we make it uncomfortable, the more uncomfortable it gets when it becomes a crisis. And each and every one of you have the ability to be able to do that, not only with yourself, but also at your organizations. As far as resources that are out there, you know, I've listed some on www.cultureco.co. I think Ned, you're going to be sending some stuff out, but you know, there's a lot. I mean, Google is a great resource, right? There's a lot of great resources that are out there where people can help educate themselves as individuals or as senior leaders at their company on things that they should think about or potential practices that they can put into implementation at their companies. They're there, you know. And then I always say the common denominator amongst everything and everybody is communication, talking. I'll leave you with that.
What better way to wrap it, right? I agree. I'm grateful to have been asked to participate in this. It's as therapeutic for me, as maybe informative as it has been for some of the folks that joined us today. And I encourage everybody to just continue having conversation with colleagues, friends, you know, strangers. Just keep talking.
Thank you, everybody. Stay safe and stay engaged.
Thank you.
Thank you.